Hi everyone, welcome to my presentation on the intellectually disabled and sexual expression. Do they have the right to choose? Historically, we have said no. Should love or sexual expression be decided by AQ? This is by Murphy and O'Callaghan in 2004. And their approach is that there is more to someone's understanding of human connection other than IQ. So people with intellectual disability are categorized in two ways. If you're a female, you are looked at as asexual, you're not interested in sex, you are eternally innocent like an eternal child. So sex is nothing that you would ever even think about. However, if you're a male, you are typically labelled as oversexed, sexual deviant, can't control their desires and urges, and will attack without warning. So therefore they're not allowed to have even masturbation is frowned upon. Their right to sexual expression, however, is protected by the United Nations. In 2017, they said they have the inalienable right to express and enjoy sexual freedom. Yet many care providers, both family-based and residential, do not allow those with ID to express or explore their sexuality. They take a protective, patriarchal view that those with intellectual disabilities are forever to be watched and treated like children, whereas in a lot of ways they aren't. They just need help with certain everyday chores. It seems to be true across many countries. Ironically, sexual abuse in this demographic is incredibly high. Recent statistics show that the high level of sexual abuse occurs within this demographic. 83% of females have expressed that they have been sexually abused at some point in their life, an ongoing abuse, and 35% are males. This is an alarming statistic. This is incredibly high. Therefore, sexual education, especially according to Eastgate, they said that, and this is an Australian study, Eastgate says that the intellectually disabled need education to primarily protect themselves and understand what sexual abuse is, what sexual advancement is, how to say no, and how to connect with people in a safe way. Yet, due to so many restrictive patriarchal in this, like many parents, I suppose they feel unsure, they don't know how to go about it. So traditionally, this is what they do. It is possible that some of those with ID may be sexually stimulated if they watch something like on social media. They may be of a different sexual orientation. They may enjoy BDSM. They may be homosexual. They may be lesbian. But because there's no expression, they're provided little to no connection with those to create an intimate relationship, sexual or non-sexual. So my chosen research is an autoethnography. You'd think I'd be able to say it by now. This is a qualitative research design where a narrative style is used to artistically and analytically evaluate life experiences to create a more in-depth and nuanced understanding of a particular research topic. By doing this, the researchers provide us with their cultural, personal, and political viewpoints. So it gives you a really great idea of where the researcher is coming from. It is formal and informal. It uses a first and third person approach. So for the researcher's personal development, Cooperman et al. States that by conducting an autoethnographic research during and after a research project, so even if it is alongside their more traditional research, it provides the researcher with the ability to become more reflexive, to think deeper into where the research needs to go, and also how to develop theoretical paradigms and perhaps influence government policy. Ethnography also allows researchers' personal experience to provide critique of where was I to begin with and where did I end up? So the article I've selected, the author, she began as very patriarchal, protective. Now she sees that for their well-being, we need to provide scaffold for the intellectually disabled to be able to express their sexuality. So it gives the reader a really great place to see where this researcher is coming from. You don't have the ability to have a hidden agenda that you're sort of analysing the data through. This really opens up where you're coming from. It also displays individual struggles of people within the community that you're studying, how they define and find meaning, and is supposed to maintain the balance between personal, creative and analytical data analysation. So why all the tech about sex and orthography, identifying the troubling discourse of sexuality and intellectual disability by Nick Wings-Yanis. She has a personal experience of living with someone with intellectual disability. Her sister had intellectual disability and was raised with a protective patriarchal outlook. And so Yanis in her teenage years didn't think about it. Obviously, she's a teenager, she's just growing up. And she studied as a psychologist and then started researching in this area because she had an interest due to family connections. And I think it was 2005, she started working in a residential home for men with intellectual disability. The first day, the advice that her colleague gave her, was another male, said to her, all you need to know is that if they're caught having sex on your shift, you're fired, because they're not allowed to have any time alone to develop any kind of intimate relationship. And this is a common policy throughout, most residential and care homes. So by over-policing them, they give them no opportunity for privacy, which limits their ability to develop intimate relationships. And if they identify as same-sex attraction, they're vilified or controlled even more. We'll hear that through the autoanalysty. And the consent, they believe that they can't give consent due to their intellectual disability. But as you'll find in one of the videos that I've attached, there is a great way of sexual education so that they can understand how to give consent. I mean, recently in the media, they're saying that our average teenager has trouble with giving consent. So I kind of don't understand the argument. Anyway, so we're going to talk about Milgram. Milgram and Nick worked together when Milgram was about 24 years old. Nick was approximately 30. And for a bit of background, she had just come out saying that she was a lesbian. And she was working with Milgram to help him with his social connections. So things like catching the bus, cleaning, budgeting, and how to interact socially. So when they were talking, one of the things that had become an issue was that he had apparently tried to hit on men when he was catching the bus. And so Nick spoke to him about it. He said that he was attracted to men, and she was finding him, there were some places that he could go so he could talk to other gay men and build up in a safe environment, do activities with other gay men and develop intimate relationships. However, when the family found out, they claimed that she'd filled his head with this disgusting nonsense, and that she talked about her being a lesbian and about how the differences between, that sex and all these kind of inappropriate things, where she said, I had never discussed any of that with him. And the parents abused her quite a lot, as in verbally. And so she spoke to the people she was working with, and they said, well, you can't work for them anymore. But the thing that struck her that struck Nick was that what then happens to Milgram? I'm walking away because I have to, but then what happens to him? So her conclusions from her report was those with intellectual disability in the intellectual disability community have been primarily ignored in a lot of discussions talking about sexual orientation and sexual freedom. The dominant paradigm is protectionism, paternalism, and judgment, especially towards males. This is the way society has looked at them for over 100 years. And it needs to be spoken about. We need to bring about some sort of freedom for these people. The power of imbalance is acute and obvious. When you are talking to them, one thing that Nick talks about is that it is very easy to fall into the trap of parent-child, teacher-child, rather than saying we're both equal and you have a right to your autonomy. Just because your IQ is low, it shouldn't matter. So this is a violation of their human rights, and it needs to be examined. It needs to be discussed through research, through public discourse, government policies, and residential homes need to accept that they have this right. And if consent is difficult for the average IQ teenager, of course it's going to be difficult for the intellectually disabled. But does that mean we just say no sex for you? Thank you for listening. I have worked with people with intellectual disabilities, and I can tell you that their hearts are probably bigger than ours, or they're just a lot happier to share them. And I've added some links for some really cool videos. There are 2 warnings here. One is about porn with intellectually disabled people. And so there's a little bit of skin. So if you're, just beware of that. I think that is number 3 or 4, the inspiration porn. That one, you might see some skin. And so don't watch it if you're going to be offended. And also some of the stories are very tear-jerking, so you may need tissues. Thank you so much for listening. I've really enjoyed this semester and I hope you enjoyed my presentation.